Welcome everyone to part 3 on how to make Subway Surfers in Scratch. In today's episode, we are going to be finally adding the trains, and I decided to leave some of the extra polishing, the spawning system, and some bug fixes to part 4 of this series. So don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss that tutorial. Anyway, let's get started. So here we are where we left off in part 2. First things first, let's go to barriers, right click and duplicate. We are doing this because the barriers and the train share a lot of similarities in how they work, so it is a lot more efficient to simply duplicate it and then make changes from there. Now, the trains are going to be staying off screen at the beginning and then moving onto the screen. However, if we were to use the Y and X positions that Scratch provides us, they would not work because Scratch will simply limit them to the top of the screen. So, to fix this issue, we are going to have to go to variables, make a new variable, and call it X. Make sure it is for this sprite only, and Y. We're making them for this sprite only so that each clone has its own copy of these variables, and we're going to be using these variables instead of the X and Y variables that Scratch allows us to use, so that we can still have the sprite go off screen. Now, instead of going to this position, we're going to be setting the X and Y variables, and then all we are going to do now is drag this X and Y calculations into the X and the Y positions of the set X and set Y blocks. And now we are going to go to these X and Y variables. So this didn't change anything in what we see, but it allows us to set the Y variable to something like 1000, and Scratch will remember that it is at 1000 and not clip it to the edge of the screen. However, to make this work, we will have to change all of the Y position blocks to the Y variable. Make sure that you do this carefully so that you do not make any mistakes, because if you do, it could possibly be hard to find exactly where the problem is. Oh no, I almost forgot one of the most important parts. Of course, we have to rename this new sprite to trains. Good. Now we can move on with making a way to spawn new trains. So, let's go to my blocks and click on make a new block, calling it spawn train. Now we're going to add two inputs, one for which lane it is going to be in, and the other one for the length of the train. Now we can also click run without screen refresh, so that way it spawns the whole train at once. Now to define this block, we are going to be setting multiple variables storing the information of the train that we are making, and then creating multiple clones of the sprite. So let's start off by creating these variables. One of these are already made, the lane in which the train will be in. So let's set the lane to the lane that we give it. Next we are going to need to know the length of the train. So let's go to make a new variable and call it train length. Make sure to set this for the sprite only. We can hide it and then set train length to length. Next up, we need to know the ID of the train. Each individual clone that we create is going to have a separate ID to keep track which part of the train it is. So let's go make another one, call it ID, again for the sprite only, hide it, and then set ID to 1. Next we must create the clones. So let's go to control, drag in a repeat block, and repeat for the number of times that is equal to length. Now let's create the clone every time that we repeat, and also change the ID by 1, so that the ID corresponds to which order the clone was created in. Now we need to start modifying the clone script to account for which ID the train is. At the very beginning, we want each ID to go higher up than the previous one, so that all of the different clones of the train are in different positions in a long line, instead of all being in the same spot, in which case it would just look like a flat train coming down the screen. So for this, we're going to actually replace the goTo block and simply set our Y value. We will drag in a plus operator and add 180 plus the ID of the clone. So now the higher the ID, the further up the clone goes. Now it is a good time to make the costumes for the train. However, a good place to start is to show the sprite and then make sure it is directly in the middle. This way we can draw it with the correct size, so that later on when we use our equation, it is going to be the perfect width for the truck. So let's go to costumes, paint a new sprite, and we can delete this old one. I'm going to start off by drawing a rectangle and moving it to the center. Now I am going to hold Shift and press the up key a few times until the bottom of the costume is directly over the center. Perfect. Now I'm going to adjust the width until the right edge is on the right edge of the truck and the left edge is on the left edge of the truck. That looks good. Now I am going to grab the fill and change the fill color to a reddish color. Of course, you can choose any color that you want. Now I'm going to paint the window using another rectangle, however this time with a blue fill color. I'm going to move it up. Move this to the left a tiny bit. And there, now it looks nicely aligned. But I am actually going to make it a bit taller. And finally, for the two headlights, I'm going to choose a yellow fill color. And then hold Shift and click to make them perfect circles. Nice. Now it is a good time to name the costume Train Front. And we are not done yet though, since we still have to make the costume for the body of the train. The body of the train is going to be all of the costumes that follow the train front, and since they are plastered on top of each other and behind the front of the train, you're not actually going to see the middle, only the edges. So we're going to duplicate the train front, name it train body, and simply delete the window and the two lights. This isn't really needed since we're not going to see the middle anyway, but I like to delete them so that you can keep the distinction between the front and the body. Now we are ready to program the costumes. What we will need is an if then else block, and for the condition we're going to be checking if ID equals 1. If the ID does equal 1, it means that this is the first clone of the whole train, the front. So we will want to switch the costume to train front. And if it isn't, it means it is any one of the other clones, which is the body of the train. So we will be switching the costume to the train body. Then we can remove this old switch costume to block and replace it with the new if then block. Make sure to keep this on the outside. And now if we click run, we can test out the trains. Never mind. I almost forgot. We actually need to use the block spawn train instead of creating the clones regularly. So let's actually remove this create clone of myself block and replace it with a spawn train block. For the first lane, we're going to be picking a random lane from -1 to 1. And for the length, let's pick a random number between 20 and 40. Now if we run it, let's see what our trains look like. Alright, well they are kind of a mess right now. And actually I just realized it is because of a previous mistake. Remember when I told you to replace all of the Y positions with the Y variable? Well, I forgot that actually one of them has to remain Y position. And it is this one over here, where we are multiplying the Y value with a small decimal so that when we go down the screen, it speeds up. The reason we want this to be Y position instead of Y variable is because we only want it to speed up if it is visible on the screen, else it will look strange at the top and at the bottom. And actually, I just remembered that there's one more thing we have to fix before clicking play. It is this block right over here. When we copied over the barriers sprite, the barriers set their own lane when they spawn. However, right here, we are setting the lane to a certain value, and then when we create the clone copies all of the variables from the parent sprite, so the lane will already be set for us. This is simply overwriting it and causing each individual piece of the train's body to go to a random spot, which we do not want. So let's take that block out, as we do not need it anymore. Now if we click play, we will find that the full trains spawn. Awesome! However, you can see that they do not look perfect, they kind of have these red stripes going back and forth, sort of glitching. And the reason for that is that our train's border, the black line around it, is not thick enough, and causing us to sometimes see the red behind it. So this is a really easy fix. What we have to do is go to costumes, and we can either increase the width of this border, however that might make the train look a bit wider than it's supposed to be. So instead, we can also simply just fill the middle with black. As we will not be seeing the middle anyway, we will only see the borders, and it will not make a big difference to the look of our train. So now if we click play, you will see that the trains are completely filled in black. However, if you want the sides to be red and only the edges of the train to be black, what we can do is we can go to costumes and once again edit this costume to be the original red that we were using from before. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool, pick up that color, and then I'll use the bucket to fill it in and also fill it in for the outline. And now we're going to draw some rectangles on each corner. Let's make them black and remove their outline. Now we're going to hold shift to make it a perfect rectangle and move it to the top left corner. Now we can zoom in a lot to make sure that this is very perfect, and we can use the arrow keys to move it very precisely. Now once there's no red showing on the side, we can zoom out again and copy paste it to the other side. However, you have to make sure that there is no red showing on the top or side edges. Now let's copy it again. Actually, this time we can copy both of them at the same time. Copy, paste, drag them down to the bottom. And keep on moving them until they're just barely on the edge. Perfect. So now if we click on play again, we will see that we have some nice clean edges on the sides of our train. Perfect. Thank you everyone for watching. I'm going to be releasing part 4 very soon, which will include how to fix issues such as the train clipping down here, how to stop the sprite from being layered over the clones, such as over here you can see it is clearly supposed to be behind the train, not in front of it. And also we are going to be making an actual spawn system so that trains do not spawn too quickly or inside of barriers or such more. If you liked the video, don't forget to leave a like, and if you need any help, don't forget to leave a comment or you can join the Discord server and ask for help there. Thank you for watching and have a good day.